A huge part of my professional practice involves encouraging my clients to examine their relationship with arbitrary societal expectations. And one of the big taboos that still exists in a lot of circles these days is the idea of being in non-monogamous relationships. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my experiences being polyamorous. So, stick around. Hi, I'm Leslie, and I am a full-time, kick-ass life coach based here in Brisbane, Australia. I had a very interesting discussion with my boyfriend recently, with my partner. We were debating what kinds of behaviors or conversation topics were appropriate for a dinner party that we were hosting. But this wasn't just any dinner. We were expecting some very special guests, and those guests were my husband and my husband's girlfriend. It's not the kind of scenario with a clear protocol to follow, and it's not a scene that you see in mainstream romantic comedies or TV sitcoms. The man I had married, who I have a daughter with, was introducing me to the woman that he had been seeing for over a year and a half. I don't think they use the girlfriend-boyfriend label. I don't think they even use the partner label specifically, but I'm just going to say partner for now. And I was introducing both of them to a man I was falling in love with. And this was an event that each of us was actually looking forward to. And these are the kinds of interesting situations I sometimes find myself in because I am in an open marriage. But to be more specific, my husband and I are polyamorous, which means that we're not just allowed to explore relationships, like physical relationships outside of our marriage. It means that we're open to engaging in multiple, loving, intimate relationships without limitations. Those relationships may involve physical intimacy, but they usually go much, much deeper than that. So we are open to connecting with other partners on an intellectual level. We are open to falling in love with other people. So that dinner we hosted was the first time that the four of us had spent time together as a group. And we hadn't established any specific rules for what was and wasn't allowed. You know, were we allowed to hold hands, or should we avoid touching completely? You know, it wasn't a stressful conversation, but it was like, maybe we should think about these things. What ended up happening was that I cooked a delicious Peruvian meal at my partner's apartment. My husband arrived. His partner arrived. We ate dinner, had lovely conversations, and then we finished the evening just checking out the view of the city and watching ridiculous videos on the internet. So it was actually a really wholesome evening. I identify as polyamorous by orientation, for lack of a better explanation, but my husband and I started our journey into polyamory a couple of years ago when a friend of mine came to visit from Melbourne, and he ended up staying with us for a week. My husband happened to be very busy at the time, so I was spending a lot of one-on-one time with this friend. And we developed this bond that was so strong for me that it started to make me kind of nervous. But then that bond that we were developing became exciting. I was excited about having butterflies in my stomach, and eventually I was excited to tell my husband about it. I was a little nervous, but I was excited as well. While the friend was visiting, I had checked in with my husband several times, just asking, like, are you okay with me spending all this time with him? Are you, like, cool with what's going on? And, he could see what was happening. He could see the connection that was developing. And he was okay with it. Being a life coach, I understand that some of the things that hold people back in life are this way of adhering to arbitrary societal expectations. And I do get a lot of questions from people when they find out that I'm polyamorous, which is great. People are curious and I love answering questions, but I also get a lot of judgment and criticism. And that's fine too. I can handle it because, I can hold my own in these discussions. And like, if someone's not going to come correct, then they're not going to win the argument. I've always been an outsider, quite proudly, and I've always been an out-of-the-box thinker, so I don't really concern myself too much with fitting in or with how other people judge me. I've been accused of not being committed to my marriage, when the truth is that when my husband and I got married, it was because we wanted to build a life together. It wasn't because we wanted to take ownership of each other. And we also understand that toxic jealousy is not equivalent to love. I've been accused of being promiscuous. The truth is that one of my partners lives on the other side of the world, and we still haven't met in person. But our relationship is about our intellectual connection, our emotional connection, something that transcends the distance between us. And it's wonderful and it's magical and it's just intoxicating. And the partner I mentioned at the beginning of the story, he's got this radiance and this just delightful demeanor that I find really energizes me. So with any person that I am partnered with, I really get to indulge all these different aspects of my own personality with people who I can connect with fully on these different levels. I get asked a lot about how I deal with things like jealousy. And the truth is, like, yeah, sometimes jealousy happens. It's usually a momentary thing, but when I experience any sort of insecurity or jealousy or envy, because these are two different things, it's an invitation for me to really look inwards into something that I might find I need to develop within myself. If if my husband or if one of my partners start seeing someone who I feel has something that I don't, then the recognition of that in my mind says, okay, well, seems like that's something that I want more of in my life and I need to find some way to develop it. In one case, a long time ago, it was upper body strength. I figured out that my insecurity about this person that my husband was interested in was that, I don't know, she was really into things that involved a lot of upper body strength. So like, well, okay, that's something that's always kind of bothered me about my physical capabilities, so that's something I'm gonna work on. And that was the remedy for my insecurities at the time. It may seem silly, but sometimes jealousy can be quite silly. It's not an invalid emotion, but sometimes the way the responses that come from it can be a little silly. So when I first approached my husband with this idea of opening up our relationship to allow ourselves the space to pursue other strong connections with people, one thing I said to him was that, yeah, I had developed quite strong feelings for this friend who had come to visit, but I knew that inside it wasn't about that friend. So even if he hadn't been in the picture, I would still feel the same way. And so it's like that friend was just a catalyst for this major life change. But I also had models This is me trying not to out anyone about being polyamorous or open or whatever, but I had models in my early life for how those kinds of relationships can function without damaging a family structure. So it wasn't a concept that was entirely foreign to me. And in my teenage years, pursuing kind of triad relationships was something that I had attempted a couple of times. So I know it's something that's always been a part of me. In the end, this friend who had come to visit, nothing panned out between us. We stopped talking for a while, but we're in communication again now, which is great. But through this exploration of how deep and intimate and strong an emotional connection can be with another person, not all of them have developed into full-blown relationships or anything that involved some level of commitment, but I've made some really great friends as well. Having the freedom to really dive in to a connection that you feel with another person, it doesn't mean that you have to be in pursuit of some sort of everlasting romantic bond that will one day lead to a communal living situation and everyone's gonna have each other's babies and all this stuff. It doesn't have to be like that. One of the benefits of living a polyamorous lifestyle is the recognition that all kinds of romantic connections are valid. Whether those relationships last several years, a lifetime, or they only last a couple of months, and they come to an end at some stage, that doesn't equal a failed relationship. All of those relationships are valid. Each romantic relationship we get involved with teaches us a lot about ourselves. It teaches us a lot about our boundaries. And it teaches us a lot about other people's contexts. And it requires a lot of concentration on communication skills. In the various polyamorous dynamics that I've personally experienced, the level of communication among anyone involved has been crucial in feeling emotionally safe, in feeling a level of trust with a person that will allow you to make yourself completely vulnerable. Because the more you put your heart on the line, the more you stick your neck out and reveal any sort of feelings towards a person, the more vulnerable you become to getting your head chopped off. The more you open your heart, the more you invite potential pain. And that is something that I've experienced. It hasn't been all sunshine and roses, but to me, it's worth it. To me, the idea of never having another first kiss just seems so sad. Or the idea of expecting anyone to be my everything, that's just something I can't really wrap my head around. My husband and I are both complex, multifaceted people. And as happy as we do make each other, we understand that our potential for happiness as individuals and as a partnership is limitless. And when we allow space for each other to experience limitless connections with people and the level of happiness and joy and fulfillment and fun that can come through that in every possible form, that makes our relationship stronger as well. I am often asked by people questions like, well, doesn't having relationships with other people take away from your relationship with your husband? And in my case, that's not the situation. Because for me, being able to explore all these different aspects of my personality and my interests and all of that with people who I connect with on those various levels means that what I am left with when I'm with my husband is a more distilled form of our relationship. It feels like a purer form of our relationship, because we're not holding ourselves as a captive audience to each other. We're not making ourselves obligated to be like a sole source of entertainment for each other. And that means that what's left when we connect is the things that we want to connect on, the things that make us, us. You know, the things that light us up, you know, both of us when we're together, the things we are excited about talking about. I don't have to bore him with my revelations about some obscure 1990s pop culture reference. I know exactly who I can go to for those sorts of things. And if he's got something that he really, really, really wants to talk to someone about in a way that would be wasted on me if I don't have the same level of interest, then he knows who he can go to with that. Love is a gift. It's not a currency. It's not about ownership. It's not a thing that can be owned by anyone. And when people choose to engage in a polyamorous lifestyle, that is a choice that needs to be respected. When people choose to engage in a monogamous lifestyle, that is also a choice that needs to be respected. But if you find yourself engaging in a monogamous lifestyle that is not of your choosing, then that is a conversation that you need to have with your partner. If you find yourself engaging in a polyamorous or open or some other form of non-monogamous lifestyle that you haven't chosen or you're not fully committed to, that's also a conversation you need to have with your partner. Romantic relationships involve a lot of agreement, and in order to come to agreements in those relationships, you have to be able to communicate. You have to communicate your needs, you have to communicate your boundaries. People in polyamorous communities have different relationships with things like rules and what rules are and the difference between a rule and a boundary. But again, whatever boundaries you express or whatever rules you put in place in a relationship that you are planning on opening up, it's really important as well to make sure that your decisions as a couple aren't going to negatively impact other people that you're involved with. So making unilateral decisions, those are things that need to be avoided, and I really need to save that whole thing for a whole separate video. Alright? So my big takeaway here is that in any romantic relationship, it's important to really outline your parameters. Outline your agreements, outline your boundaries, whether you're monogamous, whether you're non-monogamous, whether that means you are open, you know, in an open relationship, whether that means you're polyamorous, whether that means you are swinging or whatever it might be. It's important to not make assumptions about what is and is not okay in your relationship, and it's important to not take for granted that the other person is going to follow some invisible set of rules you've outlined without actually expressing them. And when you're put in a situation where you have to repeatedly examine your own little insecurities or your own bouts of jealousy that may pop up, those are really good opportunities for personal development. And that's one of the things that has really helped me truly understand myself to a level that I probably wouldn't have been able to if I weren't living in a polyamorous dynamic. But all that said, polyamorous relationships are far too complex to get into all of the ins and outs of it in this one little video. So I am going to explore different aspects of my experiences with polyamory, and there are so many different resources, books, podcasts, YouTube channels, online communities where you can learn more about this sort of thing. And one thing that you might find if you're exploring or researching polyamory for the first time is that a lot of these sources don't necessarily agree on what polyamory actually involves. There's no right or wrong way to do polyamory as long as you're being open and communicative with everyone involved in your dynamic, and as long as you're being honest and as long as you're being kind. One way that polyamory comes into play a lot in my coaching, in how I support my clients, is examining those classic struggles of envy, of jealousy, of communication, of romantic relationships as a whole, and all the intricacies involved with those. Because when you've got two people in a relationship together, that's complex enough. Everyone's got their own moving parts. Sometimes they don't quite fit together, and you have to find a way to make things fit. But then you get this other person, whether that be in like a triad of some sort, or just someone that one of the people is involved with and the other's not. That's a whole other set of moving parts and full-grown humanness that will impact that dynamic in some way. So I have really good conversations with clients around these things. And if you want to be one of those people I have a conversation with, you know how to get in touch. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and share it with someone else who can benefit from it. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell so you know exactly when I've uploaded a new video. You can also book a free life coaching session with me through my website, leslievcoaching.com, and we can work together online or right here in my studio. Follow me on my socials to keep up with what I'm doing, and please get in touch with any questions, comments, or video ideas you may have. I'm Leslie V, and I'll see you in the next video.